Hello. I forgot how dramatic that music was. It was nice.
It is.
Welcome to Selection Sunday for Mouse Madness number 9. I thought this was 10 this year. I got thrown off because we skipped a year, and but yeah, still number 9. And we are going to be deciding the very best Walt Disney Animation Studios film this year, which quite a challenge. Good luck, everyone. And when I say we, I mean you. You're going to be the ones voting on these matchups. So I'm Mac, by the way. That's Kyle. Look at that. I pointed the right way.
Yes, I'm very impressed. Yeah, I have to say the idea for this was that, it's Disney 100. So we're trying to look back at the history of the company. I'm like, oh, well, their legacy is animation. Well, let's look at their animated features. And I'm like, except that doesn't really work out for, Disney 100 because it starts in 37.
Right.
Not 23. But you know what? We're going to roll with it anyway. There's some weird cutoffs in our timeline, but I think it'll shake out just fine.
Yeah, so we'll say the selection committee had a very difficult time making this bracket because, like Kyle said, it's not like the regions are broken down by time periods. So it would have been nice and easy if it had been 100 years and been 25 years for each one. That's not quite the case. They're a little bit uneven, but you kind of get the idea of the breakdown here.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at our bracket for this year, and I will show you here first before we reveal any of these selections for this year's tournament. We have the 4 regions. They are going to be 1937 to 1958, 1959 to 1980, 1981 to 2002, and then 2003 to present. Any of these stand out to you, Kyle? We kind of grew up in the 90s, so we.
I mean, that's the one I'm going to be most interested in. I also just the idea of going from 1959 to 1980 kind of blows my mind. And there's some snubs in that category to be sure, but you're like, oh yeah, not as many as you'd think. Like 1980 is an interesting cutoff point there.
Yeah, so this is definitely going to be a very interesting tournament. Last year, we did the best Walt Disney World Resort hotels, and it was a lot easier for the selection committee to create the bracket because there are only so many hotels. I think only one got left off last year, I believe, Old Key West, maybe.
We do always spend way too much time trying to figure out how to break these down into 4 regions, though.
Right.
We go back and forth. We're like, oh, but then this. And so I bet we went through so many different options for this before we're like, all right, we're going back to doing it by year. Seriously, we went full circle on this.
Came up with a whole bunch of different categories. None of them worked. But I remember a few years back we did the best Disney snacks, and that was the easiest one. I think you immediately had.
It's so easy that Disney themselves is doing it this year,
right?
For their whatever they're calling it, Munch Madness. I think is Disney Parks blog is doing that.
There you go. So not saying we did it first, but we did it first.
I'm sure somebody did it before us too.
I'm sure, yeah. Okay, so we did it before them. That's all we can say.
That's all that matters.
Last year we did the best Walt Disney World Resort hotels, and the Polynesian came out on top, defeating the Boardwalk in the finals. Again, this year, the best Walt Disney Animation Studios film. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at our top seeds in each region here. And there they are. I don't know how well you can read them, but
I can read them just fine.
Obviously,
we have how to start things off with where Walt Disney Animation Studios starts off in terms of features. That's Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. But, we're going to shorten it because we only have so much space in these brackets.
Right. So then you go to the 1959 to 1980 region, and Sleeping Beauty comes out on top. This was a difficult choice to make in this region, I thought. But Sleeping Beauty probably earns the top spot there.
Yeah, you asked me for my opinion on the top seating here, and I said, well, she has a castle. I feel like that makes it pretty definitive. She's got 2 castles. She had 3. She lost 1, sort of.
And then 81 to 2002, we've got The Lion King. It has to be one of the favorites to win the whole tournament. It's beloved by. I don't know. Have you ever met anyone who said that they don't like The Lion King?
They'd be like, hell no, I don't like my parfait. Yeah, I don't know anyone that doesn't like The Lion King. I do know some people that would argue about its top seeding in that bracket, but
Sure.
I think it's fair.
That is a very, very tough region. I mean, we talked about it being our favorites, but it's also just
I mean,
loaded.
it's the Disney Renaissance. It's the Disney
Right.
decade. It's
Yeah, it's a very tough one. The winner of the tournament, my guess, will come out of that region. But let's talk
probably.
about the final region here, 2003 to present, and to the surprise of probably no one, Frozen is the top seed there. I'm very curious to see what the social reaction is to Frozen being the top seed and how far Frozen will get in this tournament.
That's a different movie, Mac.
Well, we'll talk about that later. But I think there's two schools of thought here, right? Like Frozen is obviously so incredibly popular, but then there's also the people that are sick of it to an extent. So we'll see how that goes. All right, let's take a closer look at this bracket region by region here. We're going to start with the 37 to 58 region. Snow White, we talked about, is the number one seed here. And
as it should be, I think. I mean, just based off of the historical aspect alone.
Yeah, I agree. That being said, I'm not a huge fan of Snow White. It's not my favorite movie. I'm not honestly disappointed to not see Doobie here in the comments going crazy for Snow White. I know
I half expected it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I expect Doobie to spam the tournament with all of his various burner accounts voting multiple times for Snow White.
Yeah.
So, which, you know, it's frowned upon, but we're not going to do anything to stop you. So just go ahead and vote as much as you want in these polls to determine what the best film is.
No, obviously it's an iconic movie, and people feel at the gym. Jeez, you know, I get it. It could go either way. I think the historical aspect will get it farther, as we'll get into our predictions. But I think people will carry more on memory and legacy more than actually having seen the film recently.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how, you know, like you said, recency bias versus the legacy. Curious to see how much those weigh as this tournament goes on. But yeah, I would expect nothing less, Rebecca. I'm sure Doobie will let us know all about his disappointment. I expect a half-hour follow-up show just him ripping apart this bracket, actually. Okay, so Snow White is the top seed in this region, and it will be going up in the first round against Dumbo. So this was a difficult selection to make for the fourth seed in this region. We'll talk about some of the films that did not make the tournament later on. But Dumbo, Kyle, what do you think about this one?
It's one of the shortest movies. It barely qualifies as a feature. It's got some great moments. I think on the whole, it's one of those. There's a lot of Disney movies that you're like, the story as you remember it is better than the movie itself. Like, it's only 50 something minutes and could probably be even shorter, but it's got some great songs. Baby Mine, obviously that one will make you cry. And it's got one of the most iconic attractions in the Disney parks. But then on the other hand, you know, this is one of them, and we'll talk about it with at least one other, you know, the outdated cultural depictions, as it says on Disney Plus. I think that could play a factor in voting.
We'll see. Gio weighs in here. He says he thinks Dumbo will fall short.
I mean, if it has a magic feather, you don't know.
It's got that classic factor for it, right? But that's in this region, all of the films do. So that's not really an advantage for Dumbo here. I enjoyed Dumbo. Like you said, Baby Mine is you know, a memorable song for sure. It's one of the most like tear-jerking Disney moments in any animated film. So it's definitely, it stands out in memory for sure, but also, like most of this region, not something I'm watching very often. Do live action remakes play at all into your opinion of the original film, or can you separate those?
I mean, I can personally separate them, but I did consider that when we were going through some of these, or, you know, I think it does say something that they took the time to. There's so many in the works that the ones that have made it out probably says something about that work.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and also just keep in mind that this is going up against Snow White. So to me, that it's got a big job ahead of it.
Yeah,
No pun
definitely.
intended with the pachyderm.
It would be quite an upset for sure. Yeah, and for what it's worth, I agree as well. The fact that whether they make a sequel or a live action remake or a reboot of any sort doesn't impact the original source material to me. That movie stands on its own. That being said, I was not a fan of the live action Dumbo. It was just not great. All right, let's go into the number 2 seed in this region for 1937 to 1958, and that is Cinderella.
This is when Rebecca gets in the comments.
Okay, interesting.
I'm pretty sure Cindy's her favorite.
Okay. This was one. So because Snow White was the first movie, I feel like it kind of defaulted into the top seed. But I think Cinderella had an argument for the top spot in this region. Few movies are as iconic as Cinderella.
What I think is interesting as we go through this, I think for a lot of us growing up, we see these movies as all happening within a couple of years. And that's not the case at all. To think that there's 13 or 14 years between Snow White and Cinderella is kind of mind-blowing in hindsight. It's kind of like when the Beatles, to us, it's like there's no separation of their
right.
You listen to all those albums and feel like they came out at the same time. So I think that's kind of crazy. But yeah, this is obviously one of the most iconic and actually plays a role in actual March Madness because Cinderella's story, obviously this story didn't originate with Disney or anything, but I think it totally helped popularize it and keeps it in that lexicon. I don't know if that phrase would exist without this movie.
Sure, and I got to tell you, it was so satisfying to be able to fill out a March Madness bracket and actually be able to write in Cinderella as you move on. So that was a lot of fun. Also came to mind, have any of these movies, any Disney movie really in general, had the story retold in more different ways than this one?
No, that's a really great point. Like, I mean, even last year or 2 years ago, Sneakerella was out. There's been Disney remakes. There's been non-Disney remakes. There's the Rodgers and Hammerstein one that was on ABC. Then they did their own live-action remake a few years ago. Yeah, you're right. That absolutely.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be one that is top of mind for people as they are voting on these matchups. As Rebecca points out, come on, inspired a castle and a cruise ship, and you can't have March Madness without Cinderella. Totally agree. I think Cinderella might be a sleeper in this one. We'll talk about our picks later on after we reveal the rest of the bracket here. And speaking of, let's get to the final film in this region and matched up with Cinderella in the first round of this tournament. It will be Peter Pan. Kyle, I know you are a fan of Peter Pan for sure. So.
I like Peter Pan's flight. I like the idea of Peter Pan. I know this is another one where those cultural depictions might play a role. I'm also kind of regretting my bracket already as I'm thinking back about it. Yeah, I love the artistry though. Like these images, like them on Big Ben, anything that you put these images on, I'm a fan of and makes me want to purchase. So I'd say I am a bigger fan of Peter Pan as an idea than I am Cinderella. So that's kind of where my allegiance lies. And obviously the ride is one of the most popular for what it is at all the parks that I've been to that have it.
Yeah, it definitely is. Real quick, before I weigh in on Peter Pan, I got to point out Gio's comment. I think the sleepers are Snow and Sleeping Beauty. Brilliant.
Yeah, Aurora is definitely a sleeper.
Peter Pan,
I got it.
Peter Pan, I like. I can't say it's one of my favorites, but then again, this region kind of falls that direction for me. So I enjoy Peter Pan. I think this is going to be a very interesting matchup because I think this is going to split a lot of people. I think it'll be very close between Cinderella and Peter Pan. But you're right. Peter Pan's flight, and I'm very curious as to what it is. Is it the recognition and the popularity of Peter Pan, or is it just the type of attraction? Is it like location? In Magic Kingdom, at least, you got It's a Small World right there, which always has roughly a 45-minute shorter wait time than Peter Pan's flight. So it is really interesting to know, where that popularity is coming from. And I guess we'll find out if it is the film itself.
Yeah, I think the themes of Peter Pan resonate with a lot of Disney
Sure.
fans more so than I want to. I don't know. I'm sure a lot of Disney fans can also relate to wanting to get away from her evil stepmother and marry a prince, but I think not wanting to grow up is a bigger factor for people that enjoy Disney.
I do think more memorable music in this matchup from Peter Pan too. So
I'd say so. You Can Fly. I love that song.
yeah, if people let that weigh in on their decision, that might be a big factor here. So let's take one last look at this region now that we have filled out the bracket. Snow White versus Dumbo, Cinderella versus Peter Pan. Again, Kyle and I will weigh in on our picks for the entire bracket later on, but this is going to be interesting. I think a couple. Well, I think Snow White has a good shot here. I think we got a very close matchup as well. So we'll see how that goes. Let's jump over to 1959 to 1980 across the bracket here, where we have Sleeping Beauty as the top seed in this region, as Gio pointed out, one of the sleepers in this tournament. Though tough to be a top seed and a sleeper at the same time, but two different meanings. Sleeping Beauty, obviously, like Kyle, you pointed out, has a castle. There's going to be a level of popularity to this film.
I think it also has a reputation for being one of the most artistically impressive Disney animated features.
Yeah. I will say, so back in 2020, when the world was very different, I was going through Disney Plus and going through all of the Walt Disney Animation Studios films, as well as several others that did not come from Walt Disney Animation Studios. But this was it had been the first time that I had seen Sleeping Beauty in I don't know how long. I was, very, very young the last time I saw it. Before that, it didn't stand out to me as one that I really enjoyed as compared to some of these others. So curious to see what people think, and I'm curious what you think about this film too.
I think I haven't watched it for a while, but I enjoy it a lot. I think Aurora is one of my favorite princesses. I also kind of, again, having that tie into the parks, like the fact that it's Disneyland Castle and Disneyland Paris's castle makes me appreciate it more. And then I also think if you were going to do a villain's Mouse Madness, I think Maleficent might take it all.
Oh, so yeah,
I think having that factor also, and it also has the benefit of the Maleficent movie was a little different than being a Sleeping Beauty remake. So even if people are kind of associating the two, there's enough differentiation there that any bad feelings about how boring the first Maleficent movie is won't tank Sleeping Beauty's chances. I hear the second one's a lot better, but the first one is not fun.
I have not seen either, so cannot speak to that. But I will say, one of my favorite Disney songs in recent years, at least, and recent years now going back, 10 years, is the Once Upon a Dream from that film by, I want to say, Lana Del Rey.
Yeah, I was going to say Lana Del Rey.
Yeah, really, really love that song. Want to acknowledge a comment from Rebecca here. Do we have an official title for LP's 2023 Mouse Madness? Do you mean like me personally? Like, do I have a title for Mouse Madness, like that adds on to like VP of all of the other stuff that Doobie has given me? No, I mean, this is Mouse Madness 9, Walt Disney Animation Studios Pictures, I guess, is what we'll go with. Unless, Kyle, you have another idea.
Nope.
Sorry, catching up on comments here.
You're good. Comments weren't loading for me, but now I switched off the comments and then turned them back, went back to that tab, and now I can see them. So that's
all right. Well, there you go. So Rebecca, imagine seeing this a double feature with The Black Hole. That's how
and the Cinerama Dome, which that sounds awesome because this movie is very beautiful, which is why the Sleeping Beauty walkthrough in Disneyland through the castle is something that I think if you haven't done it before, make sure you do it. I think it's really pretty and
awesome. It is. So again, that is the top seed in this region. That will be going up against Robin Hood. And this was an interesting choice, I thought. This
is an underfox for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting matchup. I will say, growing up, I watched Robin Hood a lot. This was one of those movies that I really, attached myself to. I have not watched it in a very long time. I do not remember a lot of it, but I do remember really, really liking it when I was very young.
To me, this film is kind of what people think Orange Bird is. It's obscure, but I think it's like it has like a cult following. The people like you and I've seen it a decent amount of times. Like Oodle Lolly is a great song, but you can throw it in a commercial and most people aren't going to know what it's from. In fact,
Sure.
they did. It was a Google commercial, I think. And it gets referenced here and there for people who just happen to. It depends on how deep your Disney clamshells, how big your library went. And if you got this one, then then stands out. But otherwise, I think it's one of those. Even on Modern Family joked about how no one knew who the character was.
Little John, yeah. Oh man, Dylan is him in Disneyland. It's just fantastic. Yeah, there's also a reference to this movie in Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, which I won't.
That's what I was thinking of. Yes, but I wasn't going to completely quote it.
Right.
But I think about it every time we talk about Robin Hood.
Fantastic show. I recommend checking it out, but it has nothing to do with the rest of this tournament. So Kyle comparing this to Orange Bird essentially means Sleeping Beauty wins 100% to 0.
I mean, it's close. I do really enjoy this film, at least from memory. I like that it exists. I think it's fun, and I think Oodle Lolly is great. And there is, Friar Tuck, so there's not a complete lack of representation for this in the parks.
True. Yeah. I will say, if I was just going to pick my favorites, I would give this the vote over Sleeping Beauty, but I don't think that's the way the public vote goes in this tournament. So we'll see. The number 2 seed in that region is going to be The Jungle Book. And this is one of my favorites, I will say. And this was up for consideration for the top seed in this region. But, again, Sleeping Beauty having the castle and more recognition, I think. Jungle Book has so much great music, incredible characters. This is an instance of the live action movie actually being great.
Exactly.
And only adding to the lore of the film. Quick story: when I was very young, before I could even talk, and my parents have told me several times, they used to take my VHS tapes, which of course were just all Disney tapes. They would just lay them out, take them out of the cases, so it's mostly just a black cassette tape, and they would tell me put on The Jungle Book, and I would always find exactly which one was Jungle Book. So I had a very deep attachment to this movie when I was very young. And again, the music is some of my favorites to this day. So absolutely love this film. Gonna be one of. I think it's gonna be a tough out in this tournament. I think it's a popular one still.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned watching this once as a kid. I'm pretty sure this might not actually be true, but in my memory, this is the first movie I saw in theaters because they used to do those vault releases however many years, and I'm pretty sure one fell around when I was very young. I don't remember watching the movie as much as I remember being in the theater and seeing like the marquee for The Jungle Book and stuff. So it's all like very vague memories. But if you asked me what was the first movie I saw in theaters as a child, I'd say Jungle Book. So that's kind of a special memory for me, and I do think it's an enjoyable movie and another great music, Sherman Brothers, and the most famous song from the movie that the Sherman Brothers didn't write. So.
And also, of course, inspired our merchandise show, Barely Necessities, hosted by Rebecca and Becca. So, just another plus there for the Laughing Place team, I think. But yeah, this is one of my favorites. It's going to be a very tough one, I think, to knock out. But that'll be going up in the first round up against 101 Dalmatians. So another interesting choice. This region was difficult to select, I think.
Yeah, it was. There's some we'll get to the snubs, and I think people are probably already putting them together. 101 Dalmatians, I'd say little controversial choice over some of the other ones, but makes sense. It's been a live action remake with a sequel and then a spin-off of the
right.
Yeah.
You talked about Maleficent being sort of a point in the favor of Sleeping Beauty. Cruella is also one of the most iconic Disney villains. So and I think probably most people, Cruella is probably the only character they can name from this film, right? I mean, she is, by far the standout of the film, and as you can tell by the spin-off, just focusing purely on the villain. So I think that is a strong point for this movie. I do remember watching this a lot growing up. I did watch it somewhat recently again, 2020. It's not my favorite, but it's not a weak choice. Like I like this over some of the other ones in the field. This is a middle of the pack movie to me, I think.
The Cruella de Vil song is one of my a simple favorite. Like, it's not very elaborate. It's just kind of cute. Like, he's writing the lyrics and stuff. For the scene that it is, I really enjoy that song. I think it's really catchy.
Yeah, point from Gio here. Cruella does have a long-lasting quote-unquote charm about her, but Aristocats did have better music. Yeah, we'll talk more about that.
I think a lot of people looking at this bracket and thinking we're all mad here.
Yeah, well, again. But yeah, this is, again, I think Cruella is just one of the most iconic Disney characters. Going up against Jungle Book here, I think is going to be a tough matchup. But we'll see what people are going to lean more towards the story and the memorable music, or do you go with the iconic character? So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Here's a final look at our 59 to 80 region. You got Sleeping Beauty against Robin Hood, The Jungle Book against 101 Dalmatians. Tough to say who comes out of this one here. I think this is going to be pretty close.
Depends on how you like your animals, on 2 feet or 4.
Sure, I guess, yeah. All right, let's move on to our next region, 1981 to 2002, where we saw the top seed is The Lion King. I mean, it's going to be got to be one of the favorites, if not the favorite in the entire tournament. I mean, what even needs to be said about The Lion King, right? Like, we talked about great music in The Jungle Book and some of the other films. Is this the best Disney soundtrack?
No. But it's really good, and obviously this one's had all sorts of spin-offs, including a 1.5. Pretty sure it's the only one in the Disney canon to have a 1.5.
Yeah.
It also has one of the worst attractions at any Disney park that existed in its name. And then it has one of the most revered shows under its banner as well.
True. So wait, what attraction am I forgetting right now?
Circle of Life at Epcot.
Oh. Yeah, I actually, you know what? Never saw it.
Yeah, not good. Don't worry. You didn't miss much. Except for I had no idea. You have to watch it on YouTube or something. I'm going to make
I might have to go back and check that out. Yeah, Rebecca, I am excited to hear Tony's opinions as well.
Are you really, though?
Oh, no, yeah. I will greatly enjoy the response to this.
Yeah, enjoy the Tony and Doobie rebuttal on Monday.
Hey, Doobie got Snow White as a 1 seed. He's got to be happy with this. No other complaints. Yeah, I'm very interested in hearing our animation specialist and his thoughts on this bracket. Regarding my question about the greatest, Disney, or at least the animation studios soundtrack, I mean, Circle of Life is as iconic as a Disney song gets. Just Can't Wait to Be King. Hakuna Matata, again, as iconic as a Disney song gets. And we're not even talking about the one that won the award for best original song, which was Can You Feel the Love Tonight? So just,
and then this stage adaptation, also one of the longest running shows on Broadway, right. One of the Tony Award winning, I assume. I don't actually know.
I would have to think, yeah.
not our Tony, not the Betty Awards, the actual Tony.
Probably would win a Betty as well, though.
Yeah, and you mentioned Hakuna Matata being a classic, but then you actually listen to it, you're like, this is kind of weird. They kind of stopped themselves from saying fart in this song. That's weird.
Yeah, but it's still great. It's still incredibly catchy. It's going to be stuck in your head for a while after you hear it.
Yeah, who doesn't like Hamlet?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're just talking about the soundtrack. We haven't even talked about the movie itself, which is, of course, just fantastic. We mentioned iconic villains. Scar is also right up there.
Yeah, this was billed as one of Disney's first original stories. Questionable, but I guess that is still a somewhat distinction.
Wow, Rebecca, highly controversial, but this is among my least played soundtracks. That's interesting.
I will say, I'm not just talking about Disney movies. I'm talking all of cinema.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the best opening sequences of all time, up there with like Touch of Evil.
Wait, you're talking about the movie itself or the score?
Both, like the opening song and that whole sequence leading up to the title
Yeah,
is amazing.
absolutely, totally agree. Yeah, this is one of my favorite movies without a doubt. I think that's probably the same for just about everyone watching. But it's in a very, very difficult region, and it'll be going up in the first round against Aladdin. And you mentioned The Jungle Book possibly being the first movie you saw in theaters. I think Aladdin was mine. So
Very cool.
This is definitely one of my favorites as well. And actually, if I had to pick this, I would say this is my favorite Disney animated feature. So
I don't know if I'd go that far, but it's definitely one of my favorites. Like I love the humor. The genie is amazing. I will say though, the show that they had at DCA was so good and compacted the story to 45 minutes that it's almost one of those where I go back and watch this and I'm like, oh, this is like slower than I remember. I could just use that 45-minute version. But no, I love this film and I love the music. This was probably among like One Jump Ahead and of course Whole New World, Prince Ali, all of those songs. And there's so many. This is one of the ones that I think of when I think of kind of these esoteric references that kids are absolutely not going to get, like You're the Boss, the King, the Shah. Or I also think next time going to use a nom de plume. Like if you polled people in Disney and asked them what a nom de plume is, I wonder what percentage would actually know. And it's here in one of the opening songs of this movie.
Right.
That's kind of crazy to me. So yeah, I love this. I don't know how far it'll go given the steep competition, but
right. Yeah, it's it's definitely a tough matchup, but Aladdin is just fantastic. The genie, I think, is probably the funniest character in any of the films in this tournament. So there's definitely some arguments you can make for a few other characters, but who doesn't love Robin Williams? That character was just fantastic. You mentioned the music; it's all great. What did you think of the live action? Did you see the remake?
I did. Becca said she really enjoyed it. She saw it on a plane. I still haven't seen it. I remember going to the Blockbuster and being so disappointed because Aladdin and the 40 Thieves or whatever the movie is called was not on the shelf. But I went up to the desk and asked if they had it, and one had just been returned, and I got to rent it, and I was very excited.
I thought I would be alone in this, but Aladdin and the 40 Thieves, that is one of the VHS tapes I absolutely wore out growing up. I loved that. That was the was straight to VHS, I guess, threequel of the Aladdin series. So
with the return of instead of Homer Genie, you got real Genie back.
Right. Yeah, which
you do have Homer Genie and Wishes though, which I thought was weird.
Yeah. But yeah, I absolutely love the whole Aladdin franchise. I enjoyed the live action remake too. But the original is just off the charts. Again, my favorite. It's such a hard decision to make, but yeah, I would say it's my favorite Walt Disney Animation Studios film. Let's talk about the number 2 in this region and what's going to be another very difficult matchup. We're going to have Beauty and the Beast as number 2 in the 81 to 2002 region. Another one that, when I talk about like the top maybe 3 Disney songs that get stuck in my head, Belle, what is the title of the song? Is it just Belle?
I think so.
Yeah, that gets stuck in my head all the time. And obviously just a fantastic movie.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil my bracket too much, but today is Oscar Sunday, and never forget that this was the first animated feature to be nominated for Best Picture. And I think it deserves it. The songs are brilliant. We saw a one of those live to film things that they do. They did at Hollywood Bowl. It was Zooey Deschanel as Belle. Fraser Crane was Lumiere. And Jane from 30 Rock. I forget. I always confused her with the other Jane from Malcolm in the Middle. But anyway, she was Mrs. Potts, and her voice is beautiful. I've never heard her
Wow,
sing before, but she killed singing the title song.
that's
And
a tough one to live up to too. So
yeah, she was great. And so yeah, that really made me appreciate how good all of these songs are. And also has it's a proper musical. It has reprises and those themes that you hear in Belle, you hear later in Something There, and that's so cool. As kind of like a theater nerd to hear those familiar melodies later on in the show and stuff.
wait, who was Gaston in that? Do you remember?
It was someone I wasn't too familiar with.
Okay, gotcha.
I'll send you our write-up. We also have a highlight reel video on our YouTube somewhere.
Well, Gaston, another iconic villain, and one of my favorite villain songs as well. So another point for Beauty and the Beast. Love this movie. I mean, there's nothing bad to say about it, really. It's fantastic. It's a classic. I did not mean for that to rhyme, but this is all right. I gotta ask the question then. What live action remake?
I thought it was fine. It's not my favorite, but I didn't think it was abominable.
Yeah, I would agree. I think fine is probably the right term for it, but that's neither here nor there. Really, just a talking point because we're talking about the original animated feature, and this movie is just one of the best. So again, this region is just going to be incredible.
We still got one more.
Yeah, we do still have one more, and that will be Beauty and the Beast going up against The Little Mermaid, so the one that sort of kicked off this region more or less. And which is funny because we started this region, this time period, at least in 1981. It was the first several years were irrelevant because we kicked off with The Little Mermaid.
8 years of irrelevance, and then we finally got Little Mermaid.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites, and if you were to ask me my favorite Disney song, I'd have again a really, really tough choice, but I would say "Part of Your World" is my favorite Disney song.
Yeah, and famously Katzenberg wanted to cut it. What stands out to me about this one is the color. Just like looking at the rest of the stills we have, except for maybe part of Sleeping Beauty, like just so vibrant and so many fun side characters and just the world that they created. And again, so many memorable songs.
Yeah,
it's tough. If you ask me on different days, I might tell you Beauty and the Beast versus Little Mermaid. Which do I prefer?
right.
It's a toss-up most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, I have a personal attachment. I grew up watching The Little Mermaid. Like that was me and my mom shared a bond over this movie. So that was, I had that connection with this film. So it's always going to have the tiebreaker in my heart. But I can't make an argument for it being better than Beauty and the Beast because they're just so close. Soundtrack, you mentioned part of your world also obviously my favorite, like I said. But Under the Sea, I mean, as memorable as a Disney
Kiss
song.
the Girl.
Kiss the Girl. Yeah, there's just so many. And
Poor Unfortunate Souls.
Yeah,
one of the best villain songs probably.
Right. Yeah, I mentioned Gaston's villain song being one of the best. Poor Unfortunate Souls might be the only one better. So it's a really, really tough matchup here. Let's look at the completed 1981 to 2002 region. I mean, you look at Aladdin; it could potentially be a 1 seed in any of the other regions.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's going to be a very difficult one for fans to decide, I think. Let me catch up on a few comments here. We got Gio already pulling for the underdog. He's got Aladdin.
Jafar, he's our man. If he can't do it, great.
Real quick, we've got the Alex Archive. Hello from Mexico. Excited for the Cinderella restoration.
Which we have info from Rebecca, so you can check that out if you're interested.
Post the link in the chat there, so you can check that out.
I love the princesses.
Yeah,
sort of. We thought about having a princess region, but then we realized that we would probably drop Aladdin, and Lion King wouldn't have been included. So that's why we don't have. That's why we said probably the biggest factor why we decided we just had to go by year instead of trying to break down the filmography under other ways.
No matter what 4 categories we looked at, there was always one obvious choice that had to be left out of the bracket because it just didn't fit. So it was just too difficult to do it that way. And then one more from Geo here. Flotsam and Jetsam get the doobie vote, I'm sure.
Seafoam.
All right, so let's go over to our final region, which is 2003 to present. We already talked about Frozen being the top seed here. I'm, again, just really interested to see what people think. Does Frozen, it's weird to say does it hold up? It's so recent. The movie itself holds up, but does the popularity hold up at this point? I will say, I think Frozen 2 is actually the better film. I
thought
Frozen,
that when I first saw it.
Yeah.
I think it does a lot of interesting things. I love the animation and the palette and what they did to evolve it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's stronger overall. I think that the songs, even though we've all heard them a million times, are I think there were strong songs in Frozen 2. I think they're stronger in
Mm-hmm.
Frozen 1. But yeah, that's just.
Well, yeah, I think Into the Unknown is my favorite Frozen song as a whole.
But also one of the worst Panic at the Disco songs, though.
Yeah, no. I'm going to go off on a tangent real quick, actually. I just saw Disney Enchantment at Magic Kingdom for the first time, believe it or not, because I couldn't let this go by for a year and a half and not see the show, despite many people not being crazy about it. I liked it. I enjoyed the show, but I think every step of the way, there's just like a little tweak that they could have made better. And the Into the Unknown one, there was a connection. This wasn't just completely out of nowhere. But yeah, playing Into the Unknown, the version that they played, which it was Panic at the Disco.
They did the credit song. I don't know which one's an Enchantment, but
okay. I don't know if that was the same one. But not using the original version of the song there just didn't hit the same, and it really just sort of fell flat for me. That song is fantastic, but we're talking about Frozen 1 here as the top seed in this region.
OG.
Yeah, exactly. And if we're going to talk about songs, Let It Go. I mean,
it's good. I think Do You Want to Build a Snowman is probably my favorite.
Okay, yeah, very good as well.
It makes me a little emotional.
Yeah, Do You Want to Build a Snowman is such a roller coaster because it is so fun and lighthearted. And then you remember what happened at that point in the movie, and you're like, oh, yeah, this is absolutely heartbreaking.
It's not quite up, but it's not that far off, honestly.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, the soundtrack for Frozen is great. They're great characters. Anna, I love Kristen Bell and just about everything she does. Anna is one of my favorite Disney characters. Olaf? Well, where do you fall on Olaf?
I like him in the movies. I think he's fine. I think the teaser trailer they released for Frozen left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, including the people that tried to sue him over it. But that just feels like so off. But overall, I think it's fine. I think he's overly hated, but I think that's you're gonna hate him more if your kid's watching this movie incessantly.
Sure, yes, that's the big factor that we don't have to deal with.
I don't know. Rigby loves watching Frozen, so we'll see.
I also absolutely love Josh Gad, so point there. A few comments I want to point out here. Going back to the previous region, Rebecca said, "I really hope Aladdin will find a way to be one jump ahead in this region." Very nice. Basically discount Panic at the Disco version, I guess.
Studio 45.
And then Rebecca says she agrees 100% with my Enchantment assessment. So yeah, I don't know. It's fine.
Who's this powerhouse going up against, Mac?
Yeah, so Frozen going up against the 4 seed in this region, which, again, very difficult decision for the selection committee to make. Wreck-It Ralph gets into the tournament.
I think this is interesting.
I do, too.
For a few reasons.
Yeah,
you go first.
Well, sure. I mean, I think for me, it's more about the result of this matchup. I think will be more about Frozen and the public sentiment of, do we still love it or are we sick of it? But Wreck-It Ralph, I think, is a fantastic movie. This was one that I saw it in theaters. Actually, I'll share a little bit of an interesting experience I had with this movie. This came out right around Hurricane Sandy, right when I was living in New Jersey, that just completely wiped out my town. So this was like an escape from what life was in that short period of time, and absolutely loved it. This movie, hit in a big way right from the beginning, and it's still like it's hilarious. It feels so different from a lot of the other Disney movies as well. Kind of crossing into
Look
that
at the
video.
multiverse here too. You got
Yeah.
Sonic and Qbert and Street Fighter characters with this Disney movie. Like, that's big for people that know what these properties are.
Yeah. So they had a lot of those moments too. Like, for example, there was the one where he pulls out the exclamation point, and it's a reference to Metal Gear Solid games. And Jess and I were big fans of those games, and we immediately was like, "Wow, that's awesome!"
It has the sound, right?
The sound, yes, yeah. So that was really cool. It's loaded with moments like that, and I mean, it's a fantastic movie. Very memorable characters. Has a lot of presence in the parks, in parades and cavalcades and things like that. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a very interesting matchup.
Well, what's funny is you didn't even mention the thing that I was thinking of, which is when you announce Frozen as being the 1 seed, it's like, well, yeah, if you have a sequel that kind of raises your profile, this one has a sequel too.
It does.
I know that, yeah, some of the 90s movies have cheapquels, and so do the other
right, sure.
theatrical sequels, Frozen and this. And I think Ralph Breaks the Internet was good too. I enjoy that movie. I don't think it was as groundbreaking as the first, but I thought it had a lot of, it was interesting.
Well, it's tough for a sequel to be as groundbreaking because, you're fitting into the same mold as the previous. I have to revisit that one because I saw that in theaters and I haven't watched it since. I remember liking it, not loving it. So I'll have to check that out again on Disney Plus. But
I could see this one overtaking Frozen if the Frozen. Well, if this was a few years ago, I think the tide would be even stronger for this because the backlash against Frozen at that point was at a high. I think it's probably receded a bit to where it's kind of a toss-up in my opinion. But I would not be shocked if this ended up beating Frozen more because of what Frozen is than what this movie is.
Exactly. Yeah. Interesting point from Gio here. The two movies Jennifer Lee had a hand in against each other. Interesting. Now I want Tony to go through this bracket and create narratives for every single time. I'm sure there are threads like this that just only adds to the intrigue of the entire tournament. So Tony, if you're watching, which I know Tony is getting ready for a big night with the Academy Awards tonight, so he has a lot on his plate. But after that's done, maybe get to work on that.
You know what's funny? I was just thinking this was the greatest Disney movie with a cameo from Sonic, but then Chippendales Rescue Rangers kind of has that title.
Good point. Yeah, that's true. And it doesn't get any better than that one. So let's look at the 2 seed in this region, and that is going to be Moana. This is tough. I think this is a potential underdog, could rise to the occasion in this region. Moana is great. This was one of those two that I went into the theaters to see it thinking like, okay, yeah, it's the new Disney movie. I want to go see it because it's the new Disney movie. And it really caught me off guard. I came out of that like absolutely loving it, immediately listening to the soundtrack on the way home. Just really, really great movie.
So I don't think I actually saw this in theaters. We saw it on probably Disney Plus or rented or something. I don't think Disney Plus was out at that point. So we saw it and thought it was fine. I really love the art of it, the colors, like I was saying, kind of with Little Mermaid and stuff. I think it's a beautiful looking film. But then what did it for me was we listened to the soundtrack a lot. Because we went to Paris for the first time not too long and got the Vaiana soundtrack, not Moana. Right. And we listened to that. And so that kind of raised my appreciation for the film overall. I think You're Welcome is a fantastic song. I love How Far I'll Go is good. But I think there's moments in some of the deeper cuts, some of the more that aren't even like proper songs. Like one of our favorites is just the one where her grandma's talking to her. Sure. And then she has that, kind of reprise of How Far I'll Go. And she goes, I am Moana.
Yep.
Or in French, Je suis Vaiana.
Do you have any sort of information as to why it is a different name?
I've heard some things. It involves copyright or perhaps I'll talk to you about it more afterwards from what I've heard. But yeah, I think that's interesting that she's Vaiana in at least France. I don't know about other parts of Europe.
So I want to go back to another point you said, talking about walking through the soundtrack a little bit there. You said How Far I'll Go is good. that was one that when I heard that, I was like, this might top Part of Your World as my favorite Disney song.
Wow.
I love that song.
I think it's really good. I might have undersold it by just saying good. I think I'll admit the part about the island on this island grades on me just a tiny little bit.
Fair, yeah, that's.
Manuel.
Yeah, come on, we know you can have you have the talent to rhyme something else there, but
so mad, buddy. Come on.
But this movie, aside from the soundtrack, which is great, and I think belongs in that conversation, because Shiny is also fantastic, really, really great song. I think belongs in that conversation of best Disney soundtracks. Besides that, though, The Rock, I love The Rock in this movie. You've got the adorable characters in Pua, and then you got the sort of lovable Hey Hey. Have you ever seen, by the way, the video of the behind the scenes of Alan Tudyk recording lines for Hey Hey?
No, but I'm going to now.
Oh yeah, you have to. It's fantastic. It's just him screeching. It's great. It's so good. Yeah, this movie is just fantastic. It's going to be a really tough. I think if you get this against Frozen, I think that's a really interesting matchup, because again, I think it's just going to come down to what people do think of Frozen, and we'll learn in the first matchup when that faces Wreck-It Ralph, when it goes up against, if it goes up against Moana, does that hold up if it is in fact popular still? Let's see here. Oh, Gio looked into the Moana title, so I guess the information is out there. So there you go. And Moana in the first round, before we get to a potential matchup against Frozen, it will be going up against Tangled. So don't look past Tangled, because that's another very popular one. I know quite a few people who say Tangled is their favorite Disney movie. So
yeah, I know Becca really enjoys this movie. I like it. I think I need to watch it again. I think at the time there were some parts that I thought were just kind of but then I also, we talked about the sequels and remakes and stuff. I feel like the following for this movie's spin-off show on Disney Channel, for younger viewers, I think really probably makes a difference. I remember when Mandy and Zach were doing a signing at D23, it was like one of the hottest tickets that you could get was for that signing. So I think that could play a role.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, as Rebecca points out here too, got a tremendous spin-off series. So yeah, I'm interested to see how well Tangled does in this tournament, because I love this movie. It's very funny, great characters. Is it I See the Light? At Last I See the Light, or whatever the title of that song.
Whatever it's called. Beautiful
song. One of the first dances at our wedding, I will say that. So awesome. Another emotional attachment to that one. So yeah,
we did a lantern thing in the Nevada desert, like that, where we lit lanterns like that and watched them rise. And of course, that's all anyone's thinking about is Tangled.
Right, of course. Yeah, Jess has been obsessed with the idea of going to one of those lantern festivals since Tangled. So
that's like I've Got a Dream is one that falls flat for me, honestly.
Really?
And Mother Knows Best is just not the best villain song by any means.
Yeah, that's the weak point of this film for me is the villain, Mother Gothel. She's fine. I just think she doesn't stand out in memory as much as like an Ursula or a Gaston or something like that. So, but I think I Have a Dream is a fun song, and I think it does well as that sort of number two, right? Like behind I See the Light. It doesn't have to be the song from the movie, so I think it fits in there. Hello, Love Pugs. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so let's take one last look at this final region here, the 2003 to present. And one more point from Rebecca about Tangled. Inspired the art on the stern of the Wish and the bathroom. Yeah, so the parks
at Shanghai, they do have, I don't remember if it's called the Snuggly Duckling, but they have a quick service restaurant heavily, heavily inspired by Snuggly Duckling.
Okay, I would hope it's called the Snuggly Duckling. Then what else would they call it?
I'm gonna look it up now, but I feel like it wasn't actually called that.
So again, a very tough region. I think these last two are going to be very difficult for the Laughing Place fans to choose their favorites. And I want to point out a comment from Gio, no Encanto. It's a shocker. Like we said, there are a lot of great films left off of this bracket here. But let's take a look at the entire bracket. So we got, I mean, again, it's kind of difficult to see, but this is going to be very difficult, I think. Looking at past years and the different Mouse Madness tournaments we've done, I've had a little bit of an easier time determining what I thought would win. Last year, we both kind of felt like Polynesian might be the favorite, and it did win. So we'll see.
Point of fact, I looked it up. It's called the Tangled Tree Tavern, but I'll send you a picture of it. And you'll be like, oh yeah, that's just supposed to be that.
Interesting. Rebecca, curious about, can't believe how low I rank Mother Gothel. But you agree with me, right, Kyle?
Sorry, I was going to back. Yeah, I think she's an interesting character. I don't think she's necessarily a great villain, and I don't think her villain, but specifically what I was saying, I don't think Mother Knows Best is a great villain song.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that. And also, I wouldn't say I dislike the character. I just think it's a very high bar when you talk about the other iconic Disney villains.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just depends. Like, there's people in a Disney movie where it's supposed to be, everything's heightened because it's animated and you can do whatever you want. I think sometimes you want your villain to be just pure evil for no reason, like a Cruella de Vil.
Right.
Whereas, Mother Gothel's are more sympathetic, which might work. That's what people said they like most about like a Killmonger or even a Thanos, from Infinity War, Thanos, instead of just being pure evil for the sake of being evil. So I don't know if people feel the same way about a more complex villain in a Disney movie.
Rebecca just doesn't agree. I don't know. We'll see. I guess maybe people will let us know in the vote between Moana and Tangled. I think that's going to be an interesting matchup. Okay, so before we get into our picks, we're looking at the full bracket here that has been completely revealed. We will talk about some of the films that did not make the field of 16. Some of the snubs from each region here, starting with 37 to 58. You got Pinocchio. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That movie's kind of
fine.
Fantasia. What are your thoughts on Fantasia, Kyle?
Well, I was going to say, I feel like these next two, Fantasia and Alice in Wonderland, I feel like Alice in Wonderland is the biggest fan snub, and I think Fantasia is the biggest nerd snub.
Okay.
I think people who are looking at this as terms of like the history of the Walt Disney Company, which to some degree maybe we should have considered, but Fantasia is, even though, not the biggest blockbuster by any means, although ironically a theater that I worked at was saved by Fantasia as a re-release years later. But didn't do much for the company at the time, but it's an artistic masterpiece. I think that probably plays a role. Whereas Alice in Wonderland, I think that's one that I would probably slot over 101 Dalmatians.
Mm-hmm.
I just think the imagery of it and everything, the attraction.
Now, would you have gone that over Robin Hood, or would you have gone directly and just swapped?
I think Alice is for sure bigger than Robin Hood. I don't know if I'd personally put it over it in terms of preference, but I think 101 Dalmatians is pretty easy to swap out with Alice for me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the wrong region, though. Robin Hood is the other region.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So.
Well, then it doesn't matter.
I can actually. Here you go. So we're talking about Peter Pan and Dumbo would be the three.
Yeah. So I'm talking about the wrong region.
Yeah. That's why you got all thrown off there. But Gio. For
some reason, I think of it as being in the 60s.
Yeah. Gio points out Pinocchio maybe more than Dumbo, but granted, Pinocchio is more nightmare fuel, and yeah, it really is.
Pinocchio disturbed me greatly as a child. I think I've talked about this on the show before. So I was never gonna put it in my top.
I'm gonna jump into some hot water here. You know that the meme of from Tangled of Flynn with all the swords pointed at him and like, what's your Disney take that gets you like this? Fantasia is unwatchable. I tried to get through it during that 2020 rewatch, couldn't do it. I get it. I get what it is. couldn't do it. I love the character design of Chernabog. It's my favorite thing about it.
Chernabog and Sorcerer Mickey.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
dancing hippo. I'll take an image of a dancing hippo. Sure. Fantasia Gardens is I'd say I'd put Fantasia Gardens over Winter Summerland. Is that my?
I agree.
Is that my Flynn Rider moose? Okay.
I agree with you on that one. So. Okay, let's move over to the 59 to 80 region. This one was, let's be honest, this is the weaker region. We had Robin Hood as the number 4. We had 101 Dalmatians as the number 3. Aristocats and the Rescuers, I thought, were the only ones that could have really made the list potentially. But I think just, not enough quad 1 wins for either one of them to get into the tournament. Going back to, I want to point out from the 37 to 58 region, Lady and the Tramp not being in the field means Benji is probably going to cancel this tournament before it even begins. So just
okay.
Keep in mind.
Let's work for you.
81 to 2002. I mean, take your choice, right? Like just anything in that. And this is leaving out some of the cult classics like Emperor's New Groove and Atlantis.
We didn't even bust a moo.
I don't think. I mean, we could have done a field of 64, and that might not have made the cut.
Busting a Moo might have been 2003, actually.
Oh, you might be right. No, wait. Oh, yeah. Okay. But Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Mulan, Tarzan.
You uncultured swine.
Sorry, I'm thinking college basketball. I'm thinking the University of Notre Dame, not.
We should have put it in there just for that.
Right, I considered it. I did, yeah. March Without the Fighting Irish. That are ironically in France. I don't know. But yeah, so lots of tough choices to leave out.
Goofy movie. Mac said the same thing, Gio.
Yeah, I'm with you, Gio. I am with you.
But these are Walt Disney Animation Studios films.
Yeah. What is the studio for that film?
I don't know. Disney Toons? Is that a thing yet? I don't even know. Pretty sure it's not. You looked it up. It's not WDAS, right?
Yeah, no, it wasn't on the list. So no, it was not eligible. If it had been Geo, I would have scratched and clawed and done everything I could to get that into the bracket because just one of my all-time favorites.
Of these Renaissance snubs, I think I'd say Hunchback is probably one of the more interesting films. I think it's probably one of the best films among these. Wow. Hercules is one that I think is the most fun.
Yeah, I think Hercules of this group, I think Hercules is the one that would have had the best chance to make a run in the tournament.
Yeah. Mulan is one I think is better than people remember. I saw it, well, it's probably been a long time ago now, but I remember seeing it not too long ago. And then Lilo and Stitch is another one of those that's like love or hate based on your feelings about Stitch specifically. Sure. But I will never forget how hard I laughed when Lilo just decks that girl in the face out of nowhere. Oh my God. My friend and I were in like either juniors or seniors and we worked in the movie theater. So we got to go see the movie for free. And we just laughed so hard because it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, 2 quick points about Lilo and Stitch before moving off of that. First, Hawaiian Roller Coaster Ride is a very underrated Disney song.
It is. And can I tell you something about this? I never know where to put the emphasis. I don't know if it's Hawaiian Roller Coaster Ride or Hawaiian Roller Coaster Ride. Like, I don't know how to say it. It's bothered me all my life. Or, since 2002. And
real quick, Gio has an answer for us. Looks like WDP Movie Tunes.
Yeah.
WDT Animation. Okay. So there you go. Not eligible for Goofy Movie. But the second point I wanted to make on Lilo and Stitch, Stitch walked so that Olaf could run. I think that is where we're at with that.
Except that Stitch can't really talk.
Sure.
Also, interesting story with Lilo and Stitch as far as the reanimation they had to do for the finale of that film was very interesting. If you ever see the original, are you familiar with this?
No, I'm not.
Basically, they had to reanimate it because it was supposed to take place on a plane instead of in these like spaceships, and so they had to reanimate it because it obviously came out after 9/11, so that changed the.
Gotcha. Okay.
Whatever it's called. Why can't I think of what's the peak of a movie called?
The climax?
Climax. Thank you.
All right, let's talk about real quick our final region, 2003 to present. Princess and the Frog is probably the biggest snub here. I mean, it's especially these days, like it's blowing up in the parks. It's becoming so much more popular. Just barely didn't make the cut. It was very, very
tough.
close. Yeah,
and hand-drawn Oh, and I know it's not the last hand drawn. That would be Winnie the Pooh, but hand, last hurrah for that classic hand drawn princess movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably even. I know recency bias and how big Encanto is now. I think Princess and the Frog is a way bigger snub than Encanto, personally.
I would agree with that. I will say my favorite of this group is Big Hero 6. Absolutely love that movie. It's so much fun.
Me too.
So
I think, Big Hero 6, we could also put, if we're talking about like cult classics and stuff, we didn't even, they got snubbed from the snubs, but we don't even have like Treasure Planet or, which I guess I forget what you're, blurring the last,
sure.
last two categories. Treasure Planet, and I think Atlantis would have been that one. And
yeah.
I know people love those movies. I think Big Hero 6 is a better version of what they were trying to do with those films, which is appeal to boys, for lack of a better.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Zootopia is obviously great as well. And then Encanto, the first one that Gio brought up as one of the snubs, and I think probably one that people will question. Encanto has a very good soundtrack. As a movie, I thought it was fine. I mean, you haven't seen it yet, right?
Shows how much I know. Yeah.
So, no, I thought Encanto was good. I don't know that it, tops really any of the other ones in the tournament or on this list of snubs for this region. So, tough to get Encanto into the tournament, despite the fact that we don't talk about Bruno is now stuck in everyone's heads. So you're welcome. All right, let's talk about who we think is going to win this tournament. This isn't necessarily picking our favorites. This is who we think the public will be voting for. Oh, wait, hang on. Couple more snubs from Gio. Great Mouse Detective, Black Cauldron, Rescuers Down Under.
I think you're just joking, but I think Great Mouse Detective. That if when you talk about that's something you could get into with Tony is when the Renaissance begins, and some people would say with that. So I don't think that's necessary. I think that could be considered a snub.
Honestly. Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. Actually, Great Mouse Detective, of the ones there, absolutely loved that movie growing up. That was another one of those that I had a really big connection with. That Jungle Book. I watched, just wore, and ironically, Aladdin, Prince of Thieves or King of Thieves or whatever it was, just wore out those VHS tapes. So, and a Goofy movie too.
Yes. All right,
I'm going to go through my picks here. Okay. We're going to go region by region. We're going to start with 37 to 58. And like I said, I had a fun time moving Cinderella up in a March Madness bracket. So Snow White over Dumbo, I think, is one of the easier picks in this entire bracket. Cinderella, I think, is going to be close with Peter Pan. I think that'll be a very interesting matchup. But if it does get past Peter Pan, I think Cinderella fairly easily gets past Snow White. I think it is the more popular princess movie. And I do know people who have Cinderella as their favorite Disney movie. I don't know that that's the case for Snow White. We joke about that being Ruby's favorite, but I don't know. I know Snow is his favorite princess. I don't know that that's his favorite Disney movie.
Fair.
So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I got Cinderella coming out of that first region. We'll move on to the next, the 59 to 80, and maybe played a little bit of personal connection on this one. But I think the Jungle Book takes over. Knocks out Sleeping Beauty, pulls off the slight upset, the 2 seed going to the final. So I got two seeds going into the final 4. As Gio points out for the other region, a real Cinderella story. Yeah, I had to do it. Nice. Jungle Book, I think, has enough. It holds up. That it's got the recognizable music. I think it just has enough to get past Sleeping Beauty in this region. And then 81 to 2002. I mean, as much as I want Aladdin to pull it off, I think The Lion King deserves it. I think it is the best movie in this region. I went with The Little Mermaid over Beauty and the Beast, but I, again, could see that going. That's a coin flip to me. I think that's going to be a very, we're talking 51-49% of the vote on that one. That's going to be a very, very close matchup.
Gio's writing all your zingers that you're going to include in your write-ups of these matches.
Okay, hang on. Doobie is here. He says, it is my favorite Walt Disney Animation Studios movie, and you're all fired. Doobie, that's just what I think is going to happen. It is the 1 seed in that region. We can't give it any higher praise as far as creating the bracket goes. Rebecca in that past region says, I'm hoping for the Robin Hood upset. Baloo is going to Catch Her Sleeping for that Jungle Book Sleeping Beauty matchup. And then Simba is going to have Fish for dinner. Do Lions eat fish? I don't know.
You could just screenshot all these comments so that you have material to work with. All right, now for the most interesting one, the modern day.
2003 to present. I've got Frozen. I think it will. I think you're right. I think what you said is we're kind of past that peak of people being tired and just done with Frozen. I think it's kind of come back around, especially after the sequel. And so I think Frozen will just edge out Moana. I'm really interested in that Wreck-It Ralph matchup. That's going to be close. Yeah. So I do like that. And then we'll go to my final four here. I've got Frozen taking out Cinderella. The Cinderella story ends right there. And then The Lion King over The Jungle Book. Nice little matchup between those two. And then The Lion King, I think, tops it, takes out Frozen. You got a sort of two different eras there battling it out for the crown. And, the king takes its crown at the end.
Millennials and Gen Z.
Yeah. Millennials. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Let's see here. Elsa freezes the sea, and then Rebecca is
best, yeah.
You could, I mean, how far you'll go, Moana? It was right there.
There's a lot of salt content in the sea. It's pretty hard to freeze.
Rebecca is not on board with Frozen. Frozen's a good movie. It is. It's a good movie. It's got a good soundtrack, and I think there's no denying how popular it is. I think it'll make a run in this tournament. I think, but we could go either way with that. People might still be sick of it. We'll see. So I got The Lion King over Frozen. Let's take a look at Kyle's bracket here.
Yeah, I'll just run through this pretty quickly. I do think Snow White will make it out of the first round pretty easily. Peter Pan, I'm giving the upset to over Cinderella. I think, I leaning again into what I think the higher themes of Peter Pan are, and coupled with the popularity of the ride, why I think that. But I do think it'll lose to Snow White based on history. Basically, the historical element of Snow White, I think, is going to be formidable. Moving on to the next region.
I just like based on history. All those times Snow White has beaten Peter Pan in the past.
That's why I corrected myself. Sleeping Beauty, I think, will, as much as I love Robin Hood, I think it's pretty easy to win there. I also chose The Jungle Book over 101 Dalmatians, but in a difference here, I don't know. This was tough. This was probably the toughest one for me to judge. I think Sleeping Beauty would top Jungle Book, but we'll see. Lion King, unfortunately, beating Aladdin. It's just such a massive movie. But Beauty and the Beast over Little Mermaid, and I think Beauty and the Beast takes out Lion King here. I think the fact that it's a proper musical, it was a huge movie for the studio, and the fact that it Oscar nominated for Best Picture plays a big role in Beauty and the Beast here.
That's fair too. I had to point out this one from G.M. Lewison burns down the jungle. Okay, so now we'll get to the 2003 to present for you, Kyle. I'm really interested to see what you did here.
Yeah, so I have this Frozen. I still think beats Wreck-It Ralph because I think it's popular enough. But then Moana Tangled, I think, could be hard. I know a lot of people, like we're saying, people love Tangled, especially that with the show factored in. But I still think Moana wins. And then I think Moana has a chance against Frozen. Anytime I go to Disney Plus, Moana is highly ranked in those most popular. So I think the combination of people, even if they're not peak Frozen hate, I think the Moana love could surge above Frozen here.
Yeah, that is going to be a very close and interesting matchup. So I like that we differed on that. I like that Nick Morgan poor Benji just sitting at home watching Selection Sunday. And then we've got Rebecca siding with you. Obviously, she was not a fan of the Frozen pick, but so big fan of Moana there.
And then so that brings my final four.
Yeah.
Snow White versus Moana. I think the historical aspect of Snow White will take it. Beauty and the Beast, I think, conquers the other Beauty, and my winner is Beauty and the Beast. I think it's not just because it's my wife's favorite, although that does play a role. I think Beauty and the Beast has lots of things going for it at all levels. There's the nostalgia. There's the fact that it's just a solid movie. There's the fact that it's critically acclaimed. There's the fact that there's decent adaptations of it. I think all of that spells victory.
Yeah, I think Beauty and the Beast is. I like I said before. I think the winner is going to come out of that region because that's where I feel like most of the Disney fans, or at least the ones who are voting in polls on Twitter, find their emotional connections to those films. So that will be really interesting to see if that is the case. Snow White, interesting. We'll see. All right, so that is our Selection Sunday show. This tournament will begin on Thursday with the actual March Madness tournament. So we'll have our poll up on the Laughing Place Twitter. Be sure to follow at laughing_place. We'll also have write-ups of all of these matchups and everything on laughingplace.com, so you can check that out as well. I'm excited. I'm really interested to see how some of these matchups go. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. I'm sure we'll also get a bunch of questions about our about our brackets.
I can't wait to go and talk to Tony and have him.
Are you sure? Because if he tuned in, he's probably we want to check on him. Can we do a wellness check?
Right. I want to see his counter bracket that has like Atlantis as a 2 seed and just all sorts of other craziness.
So left off Strange World.
Strange World did not even make our list of stuff.
Dinosaur.
Dinosaur would have definitely been
a retroactive Disney classic.
So yeah, I'm curious to see what you guys think is going to win. So be sure to follow it. I thought it was funny too, by the way, that we all kind of we're like, yeah, I think Lion King's going to win. I'm disappointed. I wish Aladdin would win. We determine who wins these things. So maybe Aladdin is just going to knock out Lion King right in the beginning. Wow. Doobie, just for this one, I can't wait to see UCLA get a 4 seed today.
I have Snow White in the top 2, and he's still complaining.
Yeah, I don't know what else he wants. They can't be any higher than a 1 seed, Doobie.
He's like, he's like, Beauty and the Beast was nominated for an Oscar. How about they gave Snow White 7 of them? 8, I guess, because there's 7 little ones and a big one.
All right, so we'll see how this goes. Kyle, do you happen to know what's going on on our YouTube anytime soon?
We're at South by Southwest all week still, so keep an eye out. Not necessarily on YouTube, but on the site. We'll have lots of stuff from South by.
Also, tonight is like I said, the Oscars are tonight. Tony will be covering them. So be sure to keep an eye out for
always a fun time
pertaining to Disney that happens tonight, which there's quite a few opportunities there for Disney to take home some hardware. And then I have to assume the next live stream we'll be tomorrow's morning show. So
that should happen. There should be Parks Talk, I think. I should probably look at the schedule before talking, but yeah.
But yes, join Kyle, Doobie, and Ethan, everyone's favorite, for tomorrow's morning news. Anything else, Kyle, before we wrap things up?
I think I'm good.
All right.
Be sure to start voting Thursday.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.